Mr. Whitmore, is Steve coming in?
Steve will not be able to join us, not yet. Prior to meeting, but it's for
Okay. Okay, so I would like to call this May 11th, 2023 meeting of the Clarksburg Urban Renewal Authority to order. Roll call.
Upon arrival.
Okay, and we have 2 sets of minutes.
Minutes at this time are going to have to be postponed.
Okay.
We will anticipate having all the sets of minutes for February, March, this meeting after the election.
After the election, okay. Okay, are there any public comments, concerns? Okay, executive director.
All right, I put quite a bit of notes into the agenda just to facilitate the discussion, but included in the packet, we have this study that was conducted on April 17th, looking at other municipalities in the state, how they handle property sales. In particular, 2 general methods were found. The city of Charleston requires a private property, the prospective property purchaser go through an appraisal process. So it would be privately funded. They bring that information to you, and then if it's acceptable, then you would proceed with the sale. Parkersburg has a similar system. Fairmont, however, theirs is a little more, interesting to try to be able to capture that effect of it being a distressed property, so there might be lower value associated with it to facilitate redevelopment. They allow for the properties cost approximately 15% of the total investment that the city of Fairmont has made into the property. So that would be all your demolition costs, site stabilization, having to get public works out to mow the grass, everything, and that we tack on liens. Looking at that total amount, then 15% of it would be the purchase price. So that provides a pretty standardized formula. As such, then finally, the city of Morgantown, they were able to actually update their home rule program to be able to sell properties directly. With that, though, there's some limitations on who can actually purchase the properties. There isn't the availability for lower purchase prices through verified charities. That would be for your low-income housing development providers like Habitat for Humanity, the Housing Authority, to be able to acquire land. Using these cities' experiences, There's options that are clearly established with the formalized side lot retail sales establishment. Yeah, retail sales guidelines and redevelopment real estate sales guidelines. Staff recommends that for redevelopment projects, the developer provide an appraisal as part of the completed application. To better provide residential neighborhood stabilization, staff recommends that for side lot sales, 20% of city funds used for demolition, site stabilization, and code compliance expenses adjusted for inflation becomes the sales price. The 20%, that's kind of going along with what we've been doing with the grant facade program. Have skin in the game. I believe that's the terms we have been using previously. So it's keeping it at that, usually using 20%. We can tweak that as necessary in our discussions. This is just a suggestion from staff. And so this would create a pretty straightforward expectation for potential buyers, while also recognizing that many property values in the residential areas may be artificially low. To give some comparison, we have a few properties that are on the docket for this evening. Looking at 105 Grove, the information I was able to find is that this information is not in the packet. The city's records indicate at least $24,000 were used for the purchase price of 105 Grove. That does not necessarily include all of the costs associated with the demolition. But to give you the idea of what would 20% of that be, so for 105 Grove, if we're using that ratio, the standard asking price would be $4,800.
John, a question, going back through there, we'll skip back. When you're talking about appraisals on the property, I would assume that we would have to set up a subset or a division to where we would have to interview appraisers. They'd have to be certain things, and then we would have to do like the banks do and put them on a rotation, or would we just hire one firm each year to bid it out and charge us X amount of dollars?
So Charleston allows the property, the person who's going to be doing the purchasing, the purchaser can come in and choose any appraiser they want. And you can accept that appraisal or deny it. Parkersburg, they have a formal RFP sheet that you send out. The city gets the appraiser on behalf of the applicant, in which case then it's repaid when the purchase price goes through.
Which makes more sense because I don't know how else to phrase it, but my friend here is an appraiser, so instead of it being 30, it comes in at 22. It ain't much, but it saves a little bit. I think the more, if this board is going to have that control, I like that second option of vetting somebody and going that route. What do you guys think?
I think it's fair to have it and more independent, but set, even if we rotate and have the purchaser take the cost, bear the cost of that.
I think you
There
have
aren't too many.
Yeah, you put a couple people on there, so in case somebody is busy, you can pick from one of the two, or something, one of the three, or put them in a rotation. That was the only question. I just didn't want to get too far down the road. So,
And so, let's see, going back to make sure I have this right. So, yeah, that concludes basically my report. If you would like to go with the appraisal route, we can then, using that information, I would recommend for tonight's items, we'll probably be recommended tabling and direction to staff to negotiate then with the applicants to obtain the appraisal. We would, well, let me rephrase that, explain to the applicants that there would be an appraisal process that may dissuade 765, given that there is no cost in that. Additionally, 105 Grove, we'll be able to provide them with the information that we've already received, so that may also impact that one. So
Now,
without getting too far into the agenda,
Yeah.
that's what we can do to proceed with if the appraisal method seems to be the most preferred.
You know, really looking back, we shouldn't take any of these until we have the program guidelines down.
Yeah.
We're taking in applications before we even know our process.
So how did that happen?
Well, as it is right now, the guidelines as established allow for you to create and give properties away for any price you deem fit. So there is, the flexibility was provided to the board to be able to dispose of properties quickly.
But it seems that the discretion in terms of the application was lying with the applicant of what they were wanting to pay.
Yes.
There was no guidance to them, so there are people who, I believe, have made applications expecting those proposals to be accepted, or that's how I'm reading it from all of them, and that's
Correct.
how the gentleman who was here was saying. I mean, I
he was just making an offer.
Yeah. I think the applicants are thinking, hey, this is, if you want to call it junk property, that the city's putting money in, cutting grass, and I'm going to offer them this because they're going to keep spending money if I don't buy it.
Well, and I agree with that 110%, but the sooner that we get these things put in place, the sooner we have, I think the big cities call them land banks, then we can market those properties. The question I have, if we offer them at 20%, and we're taking that one at $24,000, 20% is $4,800 on that. What happens, John, to the 80% loss? Are we just eating that
The URA,
as a city?
as a
Or we
city, yes.
just drawing a line in the sand. We got $24,000 invested in this piece of property. We'll sell it for 20 cents on the dollar.
Have
Boom.
we exhausted all our avenues of collecting from the property owner that abandoned
I
the
think.
property?
From 20.
Liens, suits. I mean, if you spend $24,000 on a piece of property, what have we done to get the $24,000 back?
Well, that was the purchase price for that property.
The city purchased it?
Yes, per the deed.
So we, John, are going to lose 80% on these if we go with 20. Now we can, at some point, we just got to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, the sins of the past are that, we got to move forward. And we have a lot of condemned homes. We have a lot of condemned properties that we could do this with. 20 might be a little light. I don't want to upset anybody to say if we got a $24,000, if you have a piece of property appraised at $24,000, if you sell it for half, $12,000, that purchaser automatically realizes a 50% gain on their property. Now, with that being said, I don't want to veer too far off with banking regulations, but you can take that piece of property and collateralize it up to 80%. So that gives them 30% of that $12,000, which is $3,600, to do any capital improvements, and they're good to go.
They've got built-in equity. They've got huge
Ex-
built-in equity, and we take
50%.
We take a loss.
But at the same time, if we move it up too high, we're just going to have problems.
And the law, and on the other hand, what's happening with the lots now? Or do we just get a list of the lots and put them up for bid?
As it is now, the city does have the option to not utilize the Urban Renewal Authority to dispose of properties through an auction. The goal with utilizing the URA for this would be to encourage redevelopment. So that's why the side lot program, specifically tying it to neighbors to be able to use it as a yard for residential properties, allowing for redevelopment plans, allowing individuals to come in, purchase properties that don't have surrounding development or don't, like in some cases, I think last month or month prior, we had the E.B. Saunders wanting to develop that land, but it just provides an opportunity to be able to do the
It seems like
transfer.
there's two different things. I mean, there are people who are just buying empty land and that's going to be their yard. It's their personal property, which to me bears one level of responsibility. I mean, I think we'd be more willing to let some of that go at a lesser price because people aren't developing it. They're going to upkeep it for years going on, they're going to mow it, taxes, all of that. Property that's going to be developed, such as the parking lots, I think that's a different, that's a different level of investment and expense.
Here's
So,
the thing
but
too, it says residential properties, like Sutter Roofing, that's a commercial.
Well, no, that would be one where, I guess, the side lot program, for the side lot program, yes, if it were set up to be the appraisal system, they would still have to come in and get an appraisal.
Because Grove's not going to be used for, it's going to be used for parking.
Mhm.
That's that's basically for the business, even though it is apartments. The business is buying it, the owner of the building is buying it, it's a part of his business.
I don't want to speak for the applicant, but in that case, it's an accessory parking use for apartments, so.
the other thing is too, I buy a piece of property next to me and I just I get it at a fair price. I let it lay a couple years, then all of a sudden I develop it. So I think we keep the same guidelines, whether it's
I don't know how
commercial,
many of these lots are
residential.
developable. A lot of them are just lots that you couldn't build another house on.
But at the same time, you just need to keep the same
Sure.
guidelines.
You have to be fair to
And
everybody.
I think one of the main things we need to do is determine how much we want to lose and how much we want to gain. Now, when you talk about an auction, that's a great idea. But at the same time, we need to hold that piece of property for a certain amount of time. And if it doesn't auction off and get what we want, let's say in 2 years or 3 years, then we can drop it into our side lot program and sell it off for 50%. Because to a lot of people, it makes no sense to bid on it. Just get it for 50% on the.
Then on the other hand, the city is cutting the grass.
Right.
But if the city goes after the person that owns the lot to cut the grass, we don't have an expense. So I think that's our problem. No one's charging.
Can we do both? I mean, can we recoup some of the historical cost to the city from the original owner if we have not, are all these pieces of property purchased by the city, or are some of them that we've just taken over because of demolition?
No, they are all titled to the city through a deed.
Okay.
When we do with demolition and it's still owned by private owner, then we place the lien on the property associated with demolition costs. And those are what can be lost during the tax sale process. Once it goes through a tax sale process, the property, all the liens go away.
Now, my thoughts on the grass, which is a burden to the city without a doubt. I mean, we would have to talk with that department to see if they would be comfortable with it. But I don't know why we're just not saying, okay, for summer 23, we have, I'm picking numbers, 50 lots that need to be mowed. I don't know why we don't put that out to bid and let these different entities bid on it and get a lower price and be done with it.
I don't know with the union and public works and.
Actually, may be able to provide more information directly, but there is, one of the issues that we routinely run into is you get the complaint for grass, you get the officer out there, violation process takes time itself. So in that preceding time period, the owner has the ability to rectify the problem.
Right, but I'm saying the properties that we're mowing the
Yeah.
grass, and I agree, can we segregate that out? Or is that something that's been passed on to Public Works as an additional burden as opposed to working on more important things?
Well, and that, it definitely is that. It's a nuisance. It's a situation where Public Works is burdened with having to take care of the problem as opposed to
And
planned
there's
expense.
a lot of
And
people.
then, on the other hand, it is a city lot now, so I think the biggest problem that needs fixed is the demo program. Don't tear down the houses until they've either put money down or you got a lien. I mean, we've torn houses down and never got it done. That needs change. Then we don't have this problem. But right now, I think what we're talking about are lots that are owned by the city. And that's why the city's cutting them, because it's our property. And we're trying to get rid of this burden, and we're saying, hey, if you're a neighbor to this property, we're going to sell it to you. We're going to give you the first. You can come in right now, I guess it's make an offer, and what we're trying to do is what are we gonna charge these people?
And from what I've heard this evening, staff will be able to provide you then for the next meeting, the formal policy guideline, whereby the developer would be obtaining a private appraisal prior to submitting the application. So it comes in with the application, the appraisal being from a firm that we have already identified, city, that would be permitted to be able to provide this service, and then giving it to you then to proceed with action, to either go along with the redevelopment plan and the purchase price, and then giving that information to council, or attempting to get additional exactions or denying the transaction.
I noticed some of these properties have the assessment from the assessor's office in here,
Yes.
and that's at 60% of the value.
So that's it. The assessment is defined as being 60% of the fair market value.
So,
Couldn't we just use that?
yeah,
We have, that is a potential. The problem we run into is that that's going to be a tax assessment basis. It's not,
Yeah.
even if it's supposed to be fair market value, it's not.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about, we will not get fair market value for, I mean, we're not even close to that. So we just need to have some idea of either what we've put into it
Mhm.
or what it's worth, and then what percentage of that we're going to accept as a purchase. Is that what we're saying?
Well, you have the assessed value
Right.
at there. We have the cost we have in there. But the other thing is too, this can go two ways. If you've looked at the housing market over the last 36 months, properties that would sell for $100,000 have been selling for $115,000, $130,000. Tax assessment years, if I'm not mistaken, don't they run about 12 to 18 months in the rear before they get caught up? So you can actually overcharge somebody on an assessment, or you could undercharge because, quote, the market's hot. That's why I think if we have vetted appraisers, they're going to give you a real-time value of what that property's worth. So the property, let's say a piece of property is now worth in today's dollars $100,000. We've got 50 in it. We know that there's 50,000. The assessors is just going off of some calculations that were there from the previous year. So you really, the appraiser gives you a more realistic, more real-time snapshot of what that property is worth. And then, yeah, whatever department, Kim, John, working together, whatever, can say, okay, we've got this much in mowing over 3 years. We've got this much in demolition, da, 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 da. That's what you guys are looking for. How much has the city spent to acquire this property? The appraiser is going to tell you what it's worth. And then from those two numbers, we can break it down and say, okay, we want 40% of that property, 30% of the property, 50% of it. But basically, going back to what you're saying, John, we need to get our guidelines in place, make it the same for commercial or residential, the percent, because it'll adjust itself. You know what I'm saying?
most of these properties, they're not buildable. They're too small of a lot to build another house on.
We have a number of properties that are city owned that it's a combination of the area, the way the parcel is designed, or floodplain issues where development is not going to happen.
I could see in a situation like that, no development, you sell it to the neighbor and
Right.
just get the property off of our rolls because it's costing us money to cut the grass.
Right, and I think for that, you use what we've put in it.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily matter, I mean, they're gonna sell it as a,
And no one's gonna pay
Parcel with their
$24,000 though for a lot you can't build on.
Right.
Even though-
But an appraised value is going to give you that real number in that lot. Because something that we might want $12,000 for might come back in, well, it's in the floodplain this year,
Yeah.
so it's only worth $8,000. So what I'm saying with the appraisal, and the reason why I keep pushing it, the appraisal, depending on where the lot is located, will give you an accurate snapshot of its value. You and I want to get the lot between us. Okay, it's over here in this field. Well, it's only going to appraise for whatever it is, so it's going to be fair to us. Now, if it's a piece of commercial property in downtown that we want to get, it's downtown, it's in the central business district, it's going to bring a different market value. Because the guidelines that we set now is what this board will carry on for quite some time. So yeah, we've got a couple pieces here, but I don't think there's anything in there, John, that's pressing that's going to sway one way or the other.
No, and if it does look like, with the cases that are currently before you, I guess let me rephrase this, the unfinished business for tonight's meeting, it may be, in speaking with those applicants after tonight's meeting, that may impact their going forward.
Just us using 20% moves that one from $1,000 to $4,800. That application may go away anyway. So
Well,
I think.
Well, and I think if you use the appraisal value, it's going to go up higher, which is good for the city, but not necessarily.
No, the appraisal tells us what it's worth. We decide what we want to lose.
Well, maybe we should look at the properties. It would be a lot easier for us if we go out there and say, listen, no one can build a house here. And this guy here is the only one that has use for this property or this entity. You sell it to them because no one is going to develop it but them. It's a dead lot that we're cutting. Then you can lower the price just to get it off our books. But I don't know how many properties we have that is number one commercial. We're not Morgantown where you're in Sunnyside.
No,
You've got an empty lot and it's going for
But again, how do we know what to charge that person if we don't have a current appraisal? Let's say it appraises for $20,000. We can come in here like John just said. And we can say, you know what? It's on a hill. That guy for some reason wants it. We'll let him have it for $5,000.
But who appraised it at 20 then? Who's saying it's worth 20 if you can't build on it, if it's in the floodplain?
John, it's just an analogy of
I understand.
we don't know what to deduct if we don't know what the property's worth.
What if it appraises for less than what we have in it?
Then we know.
I mean, then
We know that we're upside down on it. But the appraisal will tell you, it'll dictate where you add and subtract.
Lot size is something I think we look at too. You need 4,000 square feet or more for to build a lot.
How many of them lots do we have on this list?
I think you can probably look at from Harrison County GIS, and it'll give you square footage of a lot of these
Because
lots.
them lots we need to get with the housing authority and build new homes like we've done in the past.
Now, the smaller lots may benefit someone that might need title lot coverage. They may need it to build a garage or an accessory structure. You know, they may want to put a pool or something like that there, you know, or even a garden or something. The smaller lots, I think, could go for a lot less because really they're not buildable lots. The only thing they could really do is benefit one of the joint property owners.
And what if we did something where we said we will accept 40% of either private appraisal, funds invested, or tax data, whichever is the higher amount for us? I mean, that's simple. That gives people options. It makes the math simple. It makes the options simple.
Okay, so staff can provide that, whereby the urban renewal authority, the board may, providing that giving you the flexibility then to pick which
Yeah,
value.
would that fit what you're saying? We can have all, because I can see different issues with different properties.
Yeah,
That gives you appraisal and it gives you then the tax assessment and what we put into it. I mean, you have all the data.
yeah.
I think we need to get, we've had people on hold here since February, and I think we really need to get some,
Well, we need to get our
get-
guidelines in place
we
first
need to get our
because,
guidelines decided.
and I agree with Johnny Joe, if we have a snapshot, i.e. a picture of this, again, what John is saying, we have the discretion. If that property would appraise, I'm just saying for 20, and we go 20, We voted to let the person have it for 5. But we have the data when somebody else comes in and walks in and sits down and goes, am I going to get that property for 80% off? You gave it to Bob that way. No, that way we have all the data. He supplies all the data. We have the appraisal at that time. And then we decide what we want to charge for it. I agree with what you're saying, and I agree with what John's saying. But you have to have a benchmark out here. You have to close the triangle. You have to have what the city's got in it. We got to have what we're maintaining the property and what its FMV, fair market value, is.
I suggest that you take any buildable lot off of the side lot list. And the lots that aren't buildable are the only ones that we're gonna put up here. Where if it's buildable, we're gonna we'll use it for housing, for new housing. If it's not buildable, we can use some discretion. I think the city's goal is to get rid of, you wanna get rid of these properties?
That was the intention, yes.
Yeah, so I think in that arena, and if people aren't going to be developing it,
Well, we just have classifications of it.
right,
Non-buildable, buildable. Let's say we do get a commercial, we would just have categories that they would fall into, and then we could, but we'd
Use some
use the same
discretion.
formula with just different percents of purchase.
And staff can do that. We're able to establish with our database of the city-owned parcels, we can give you a pretty good estimate of which ones are not going to be buildable based on zoning code, building code, and floodplain priority.
Can you get us a list of them properties and then, because really, the housing authority in the past has built homes. We should work with them to get some, give them this, make it available to them if they would like to build additional houses.
I think you're hitting on all cylinders now.
And then when we're talking about, the Stadium Drive, there's 10 acres. You only want one. What's the other 9? Is it over a hill? Is it grass that's going to need cut? Is it a floodplain? Or are they just going to cherry pick the 1 acre of level land and let us cut the other 9 acres for the next 50 years?
We can discuss that item when we get to it on the agenda. I feel more comfortable.
If you could bring some more pictures of the 9 acres and what's behind it.
Okay, so
Yeah, because I'm not going to sell 1 acre of prime land and then we got to pick up the other 8.
no, in that case, in the case that when we're discussing 2 Stadium Drive, they own that 10 acres. There's a triangle piece, so if you go, I'll be able to show you the page.
let's wait till we get.
Let's
to that.
do that.
So we need a policy to vote on. We've got to make a decision about how we're doing it. I think these were a lot of good discussions, and you gave us a lot of good information here, but we need to be able to put out how this program works. We're almost at the end of the tax year, property tax year again. And I think we've got to be mindful of the loss to the city, how willing people are to buy a piece of property just for the heck of it versus people who are buying property to develop, which I think it's 2 different things.
And then it does get it back on the tax rolls if it's off the city.
Yeah.
But, every piece of property is kind of different. Even though it appraises for something, who's going to buy it? Because you can't build on it. And it's only worth something to me if I live beside it.
It's kind of like eBay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say something's worth whatever it's worth, but
But
if there's
again,
nobody going to buy
But
it.
again, the appraisal tells us what the property's worth. We in turn then can make an offer to those people. And with these little pieces, I think once we can get appraisals on those, maybe we send a letter out to John Smith next door saying, you know what, here's a piece of property appraised for $8,000. We're going to make a one-time offer, give you a 60-day option to purchase it for $2,200.
But what we really don't want to do is lowball. I mean, I can't say that enough. We've got 24,000 in it, and it as a piece of property appraises it at 8. That's a different discussion.
And that's what I'm saying. The appraisal allows us to have conversation on each individual property and in each classification, because you're going to have the small ones you can't build on. You're going to have the buildable lots. You're going to have commercial, and then you'd have a category called miscellaneous for where that puzzle piece doesn't fit into any one of those three. But we can sit here and determine what we want to sell the property for after we know what it's worth, after we know what we've spent. The city has maintained it, like I said, with a triangle, and if we have any demolition costs or anything. So you've got cost incurred, maintenance, and the appraisal. And that
With
appraisal,
the demo, we'll probably have more in it than it's worth. So we had to tear the
That's
structure
what
down.
that's what I'm saying. So if we go by an appraisal, we lose money.
no,
How do we not? If they're expecting a part of that.
If it costs you $20,000 to tear down the house and the lot's worth $5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
so
no
we
house
know-
and it's not buildable anymore because of new codes. These people were grandfathered in from 100-year-old houses.
so with that being said, let's say we got 20 in it, it appraises for 5. Okay. We can't take 40% of 20 grand, which is 8,000, and somebody's going to overpay for, they're not going to pay 8,000 for a piece of property that's only worth 5. You see what I'm saying? How the appraisal tells us
I see
where
what
we're
you're
at.
saying, except that's not in the city's best interest. The city's best interest is to recoup from our money in, not
His-
necessarily, I mean, that is for the consumer's best interest.
No,
100%.
that's for us. But what again, if we have 20,000 in it, we know what the property's actually worth. It's worth 5. So then we can say, how much can we get in it? The guy next door may not want to spend more money for it. So we know that we've got a piece of property we're upside down on. And I don't think there's anybody here that's not going to say, we're going to lose money with what we have. Moving forward, we can be smarter about it, like John says, go after people and that type of thing. But we've got a pile of property that's already paid for. It's an outstanding debt. I'm sure that I'm trying to think of the term I want to use. It's already been depreciated off. So technically, the money that the city spent 10 years ago on a piece of property, they take a depreciation on that. And so these properties are technically, Cam, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got nothing in them at this point.
I mean, we're really not in it to make the money. We're trying to recoup some of the money. In most cases, we won't.
Exactly. The thing that we incur a cost every year is the mowing of the grass,
Maintenance.
the maintenance of that piece of property. So the appraisal says it's worth this. Kim says, yes, we've spent, this is what it costs to acquire it, but our annual maintenance over the last 1, 3, 5 years has been this much in mowing. We're going to lose money with what we got sitting here. Once they can categorize, we'll call them next door properties, buildable properties. Like I said, I'll go through this again. Commercial and then miscellaneous. Gives you 4 categories. The appraisals, we put those numbers together for each one. We know what, when we sit down here and Joe Public walks in, we can sit here and determine or predetermine what.
We're going
the
to
offer
lose
is.
money, but we're going to cut our losses.
Exactly.
Because that money's already been budgeted, and it's property that we can't sell. I mean, that's what we got to look at. If it's a piece of property that somebody could do something with, which all I want to see is a list of the properties that you cannot build on. Then I don't care what we got. Just get rid of them because no one can build on it. It's not does no use except the neighbors. So we can either cut the grass or we can try to.
And
Come up
moving
with some
forward,
type
that
of
will free
price.
money up that we've been spending on grass. I think do I want to say unrealized gain? So if our mowing bill on those properties been allocated at $10,000 a year, when she does the budget next year, we got rid of all that. Yes, we took a loss, but now we have an unrealized gain of 10,000 that we can put somewhere else.
How many
i.e.,
properties do we have?
I have to pull that up.
we can put that in. There's money by getting rid of these now off her balance sheet. We can actually put money back in. There would be a windfall for us for facade program.
Well, not only that, I'm thinking too, this sidewalk road, if we go and give it to like Grove One, for instance, we're gonna provide a parking area for him. Yeah, we're gonna lose money on that right now, So once he gets that parking area, he can get better tenants. So therefore, he's gonna be making more money and we can collect more B&O. So in a way, we can collect some of that even though we're selling it at a lower rate. We're gonna get it back when he gets better tenants in there and collects money, we'll collect money.
Yeah, and then if he's going to get a building permit to doze the lot over, he's going to get a building permit to pour the concrete at X amount of dollars. So again, that falls under, on an accounting side, it's called an unrealized gain, and that's what she's saying. Down the road, we're going to see. Now, we're not going to keep balance sheets and keep adding what we've gained, but yeah.
There's no other neighbors next to if that's the case. Every piece of property is different, but we know these properties here aren't developable properties. 90% of them you're saying aren't. That's our dilemma. It's like, we want to get everything out of it, we can, but how much is the guy willing to pay and how much do we?
And how do we know what to charge until we have an appraisal on that lot?
Then once we get the appraisal, I guess it's up to us whether we want to accept, we make them an offer and they counter. At least we have a number to work with.
There you go. That's the point I've been hammering home. We have a benchmark to work off of, up or down. And like I said, it may take us a year or two to get rid of them. There might be neighbors that don't want them. But Kim will tell you from an accounting standpoint, we're going to make future money in what's called an unrealized gain.
And who's paying for the appraisal? The applicant?
In this case, it would be the applicant, as I'm understanding the board.
And we surely don't want to pay for it.
Well, that's one thing to keep in mind. We are talking about approximately 35 city-owned properties that we've already identified as being eligible for transfer. There are some additional properties which are tied up with utilities that we don't want to see considered, that we being the administration when we made the initial mapping.
The other thing is too that nobody's discussed, we need to bring in, when he said utilities, there's pieces of property in the past when I was sitting on the P&Z that we could not sell because there was a 30-inch gas line going through there. Nobody could see it. There was a 40-inch sewer line or water, and Public Works and Gas, Water, Electric, Dominion, whatever, didn't want development on because it was over a gas line or something like that. So those will have to also be weeded out. That there'll be properties that we'll always own.
If the board's amenable, I have direction from tonight to be able to provide you with the agenda item at the next meeting, with the guidelines, with the proposals as given tonight for basically a multi-pronged valuation strategy for these applicants.
Kind of multi-level, different use.
Yeah, like I said,
Different use.
non-billable, billable, commercial, and miscellaneous. The other thing is too, we also need to provide John the opportunity to start looking at appraisers and see who wants to be part of the pool. I mean, we do that. The city council does that with tow trucks. They're on a rotation.
If agreeable, I can do that.
We just
I
get a
guess an
list of how
RFP
they pay
immediately.
their city licenses that they're listed as appraisers and send them all a letter. Hey guys, if you want to participate in this program, get on the list.
Put an ad in the paper that way because you might get.
Have a standard fee of what you're going to pay. And
Will you contact the applicants so far?
Yes.
And please just tell them where we are in this.
Yes.
For the snowshoers and-
Yes. With the only one that is challenging, I think, would be 105 Grove. I had an opportunity, the applicant's unable to make it this evening, but we can discuss that with him, especially given that I didn't say volatility, but the expectation that the current offer is probably not enough, just given the values we're seeing, just to prepare them for the possibility of an
I think
increase.
we let him know that at the last meeting too.
Yeah.
I think that's been, that was basically what got us to this point, was that in talking about it. So it shouldn't be a super surprise. I don't think
No.
he'll like it, but it shouldn't be a super surprise.
Is he the only neighbor to that property? Is he the other side?
Well, he's on the block, he is. I think as the guidelines are written, there are 2 other property owners that could acquire the lot, or redevelopment.
Have we called,
No, the neighbors have been
How'd
notified.
this guy find out about it? Or did we run ads? Is it on our
No.
website?
No, with this one, the gentleman, well, he became aware of the side lot program. What generally happens is we'll get a phone call for the city manager's office, hey, I'd like to buy this parcel, it's owned by the city. And then, well, this is the process we currently have to be able to sell property, because otherwise we'd have to auction it. We're not doing any property auctions at the moment. So staff can work with that, provide you all with the information in the coming weeks for a determination, in which case then we can move all these items.
So
Or at least and then also prepare them for the appraisal fee as well.
Amy and John, should we, Paula, I guess you can get this down. So I'll go ahead and make a motion. What do you want us to do?
No, we're not, staff has consent, I have
Yeah, he
consensus.
just has to develop the program,
All right.
then we will vote on. It will be
But
like
we
with
need
the
to give him
facade.
an agenda of items we want him to work on.
He
But now
needs to redevelop the
Okay.
program like we did with the facade, then we will vote on his
He'll put it
proposal. So we
on the
keep kind of
agenda
working, yeah.
that we
Okay.
discuss this item and then we'll go.
Yeah.
from there.
Okay.
Sounds
We talked, Paula. We just talked.
That's the first,
Okay.
next, that follows into the redevelopment program as well. We'll have all those guidelines available at the June meeting. C, the 2023-24 facade grant award planning. We have some options looking ahead to the next fiscal year. Staff is anticipating quite a few applications right off the bat.
Why?
Well, we've received inquiry on if there's any funding available now. We all tell the applicants will know, but you'll be refunded
How much do we have left?
about $2,000.
So are we not going to spend?
Well, with the applications that are being considered, I'd hope to be able to have a mural project come in at that amount, but it's closer to 10,000.
So do we get to roll that money over or do we lose it?
It'll be lost.
Don't think we want to lose it when we were trying to ask for more. I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Well, one thing I can do in the near term is try and find an applicant. We like I said, we reached out to some. It's just that was the problem. They came back with much more. So that's why they're going to be submitting applications for the next fiscal year. But I can look at I can get with Ashley.
Reface the signs.
Yeah.
But we can't be in a situation where we spend all our funding in July
Yes.
because we put people off because we didn't have enough money. Because then we're not giving anybody else a chance. These are people that have heard that are waiting. They're gonna all apply July or August and we're out of money. And I don't think that was our intention when we increased all of this. So I think we definitely need to find a way to spend every penny that we have because we have asked City Council for more money because there is a need. So if we're holding on to the need, I think if you could at least report back in June, here are all the ones that we can't fund. I think that's got to be noted in minutes or noted somewhere.
Well, has the council say that they're going to increase our budget in?
I believe it was up to 50,000, correct?
Yeah, but
So
if
an
we're,
extra 10.
Well, I mean, but if we're holding on to this information and our actual fiscal year ask was 50,000 over what we had, I think they need to know that. And I think that's important on our behalf and for this program. So if you can at least put together, if we had the money, these are the people that would have been applying.
Okay.
But we don't have the money, because that's gonna totally skew the breadth of this program.
When we went to 10,000, they didn't fund it. They didn't give us enough money to do 10. They did us enough to do four for softballs
Well-
at a max, because everyone's going for the max if they're going to do their building.
Well, what happened was we had the discretion to go lower, but a lot of people are asking for huger projects because of that. And we've had a few smaller ones come in, but I think people said, oh, 10,000, I'm gonna max this out,
Well,
which
And,
you should do.
and my thing with that is looking at business owners, and I'll go ahead and throw my hat in the ring. You normally get a tenant for 3 to 5 years. If you look around Clarksburg, 3 to 5. So if you take my building, for example, and give me $10,000 one time with the tenants that I currently have, that's a shot deal. So 3 to 5 years, somebody leaves. There's no way to get business, not only in my building, but any of these other buildings. That's why the 10,000, I think, should be dropped to $7,500 for the building owner, and then any business applying, because they're going to want signage and that type of thing. Well, the next person that comes in isn't going to want the same colors and that type of thing.
We had last year to redo this. We are not redoing that program right now. We spent months last year. Unless you want to make a motion and we look at it again, I just don't think we can take.
I'm saying
months
moving
again to do
forward, Amy,
Uh-huh.
we need to look at that, because you stymie business that way.
Well, we have the discretion every time to give less, but members of this board said that that's too discretionary. So, I mean, we can give $2,000 every time. We can give 5% every time. We don't have to.
But
be
John
out
hit the
money.
nail on the head. Right now we do 10,000, 4 people coming up, 5 people get it. We cut it in half, 10 people get it. It's severely underfunded.
It's very
Absolutely.
underfunded.
The
Yes.
budget at a minimum, and everybody will fall on the floor, the budget on this thing should be a minimum of $140,000 to $150,000. At 10 grand, that's 15 people. Now you can do something. And we need to look at those things a little bit closer too, in regard to when we're passing out money.
I agree.
A hundred, and the thing is, and I'll say this now for record, I want an application to come to us that we review, not because Joe Public running here said, well, I need the money tomorrow. And it doesn't give us time to review it. It's not fair to John. It's definitely not fair to this board. But somebody submits an application, tell them straight up. It could be 90 days out. The first month we get it, we discuss it, and we bring it up. So nobody should be looking for money within 30 days. I really think that when he hands out an application, it should say it could take up to 90 days to get it. Because you think about, we move these people back and forth anyway, and all we're doing is aggravating them. So why, like you said, Amy, let them have the understanding up front. It could be up to 90 days. It might be something easy. We might vote it up and down, and they get their money in 2 weeks. But give us a cushion so that we don't look the way we do. Correct?
90 days is a long time to wait if I'm opening up a new business and I need to sign.
If you
Part of
need-
my
it-
dec-
but
part
you
of
know,
my decision to
here's
come
the
to
thing.
Clarksburg was I will
And
get
I've dealt with
facade.
this, and I've dealt with this year with different properties I own. If your business is dependent upon us giving you a few $1,000s, you're not going to be there in 18 months anyway.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
They're not going to be there anyway. Look at some of the situations we're dealing with now. Not this board, but
And my recommendation would be that like every other year we look at it, because I think part of what I'm getting from what you're saying is there's a lot of movement, a lot of motion, and this is a program that is the success of which is based in part on the temperature of the city at the time and what's going on. So I think it's a fair thing to look at it.
the budget's coming up, and there's shortfalls, but we have other money, And again, unrealized gain, I hate to say this, but we're holding on to a chunk of COVID money. And
Well, I tell you what, let's focus on this sidewalk program and try to see if it's even possible for that money to come to us that then we can use for the facade program. Let's try to get money in. Let's try to get something going that gives us some money in, not just from city council. So
But it's May in the budget, we're going to be, we're running right up against it. So we definitely, maybe we go to a council meeting and hard press and say, hey, you need to throw this in quick. We need
And I
$100,000
think
to
we
start
should
with.
ask our liaisons not here and the manager, but they have a beautification fund with $80,000 in it. We're slum and blight. I
Yeah.
think that could fall under us.
I agree.
And why have another committee to
Yeah.
do what we're doing? We take care of slum and blight. And that's beautification, isn't it? You're gonna beautify something that's taking care of slum and blight if you're gonna beautify it?
I would say it's
Invest the money.
related.
let's move on. We're almost an hour.
If you could ask to bring that up to
Yeah.
the council.
Yeah, 'cause we've mentioned to council, we'd love a double. We'd love our budget to double for next year. I mean, I think that's been communicated to council member, and so I think getting that information of who's asked that hasn't been brought here would help
Okay.
support that, if you would share that with us. as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to call them preliminary applications because I haven't received anything, but I'll reach out to those applicants and just so I can provide that information because it was. So, for instance, the one application is going to be from the Clarksburg mission, utilizing funds for a pretty large mural. I was a little surprised when I saw the price of that thing. So, I think just a mural of
Is that the one Joel Dupin is he doing that
Yeah.
one too? 'Cause he's doing the one down here.
yes. So,
How
but
many people can you feed
Maybe
with a
we
mural?
need to find a different artist.
well,
I said,
Okay.
maybe
they have to have a second quote. So that's what we're working on right now.
So the facade, part C, letter C
Yeah.
here, is there anything we need to move on, or are these?
Just the board can discuss these items. We can make modifications to the program to better target funds. But I wanted to bring this to your attention because I know there is a concern about how we're utilizing monies throughout the year, and that the forecast is going to be another quick dispersal of monies. So, I just want to give you that information. We can begin evaluating it. It sounds like we should probably have this upcoming data to be able to have a better idea of what we're looking for, though.
it's a whole new, it changes the whole program.
It does, yeah. All right, historic structure, internal repairs fund.
So this would be a new program. It was funded in the most recent budget. This would be funds that would be set aside for, think of the elevator fund, the internals of the structure as opposed to what's going on outside. Generally, this type of program is historically going to be related to CDBG funding and historic preservation. What we anticipate is the applicant would come in. They have to generally, if they're going for historic preservation funds, they have to have a licensed architect, and that's one of the biggest problems we run into is having funds for professionals. What I'm imagining would happen with this program is this would be a way to actually fund an architect or an engineer to come in and look at some of these buildings like the Empire. Utilizing those funds then also as necessary for the internal improvements.
So is this a fund that's been developed by city council, or is this something you'd like to see developed in the future?
There is the line item, so it is in the budget. So there is funding, there are monies set aside, and we'll be providing you with draft guidelines to be able to establish this type of grant fund.
How much?
It really depends on what we would be wanting to do with the guidelines. At this time, though, I could see it as being either dedicated to one project or looking at.
I know of 4 potential elevator projects. The cheapest appraisal for 4 years ago was $125,000, and that went entry level, and you went up 2 floors. Because the thing about elevators, you don't have an elevator company come in and do it. You have an engineer. You have the elevator company you buy the package off of. You have electrical. There's 4 to 5 different, then the state comes in and then they do a weighted test on it and that type of thing. So elevators are, like I said, just on 3 floors. And that was 5 years ago, was 100 and, I think about 120, I think. So it's, you go up into the Empire, you go up into the golf building, you're looking at massive amounts of money. One elevator, all we need is one elevator money to do great things on this board alone. So, yeah, so I'm not sure where that money's going to come from.
Well, this would be part of the capital stack. And with the problem we run into with many of our downtown property owners, many of the property owners in Glen Elk, is just that capacity to do the preliminary planning, the preliminary architectural work. It's just, they don't have the money to get their professionals in there. So this could be a means to do that and also provide for redevelopment opportunities that are being requested by citizens and residents. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
His finance director.
Okay, in the beginning, I just put what you all already talked about, the balance in the facade grant, $2,284. And then the total demolition costs in the last 2 months. In April, we sent out notices to all, you have a listing here of 200 properties that have demo costs still due. And we sent out letters, and we have received a lot of feedback, trying to work with some people on payment agreements, and some have already started. So since January, we've actually collected $80,000 in demo, which,
Good job.
yeah, it's not too bad to start off, but we have been able to find some folks that we couldn't find before. So we're working on it. It's a slow process, but we are headed in the right direction. I gave you all the budgeted line items for next fiscal year that the city council approved for URA. Facade grant, $50,000, sidewalk program, $35,000, land reuse acquisition funding, $20,000, parking garage structural analysis, $40,000, and the historic structure internal repairs funding, $55,000. Now, I know you had talked about earlier asking for more funds for the facade grant, and we do our first budget revision in July. So if you wanted to ask late June or something, John may want to ask city council to entertain that idea on the first budget revision in July,
So the demolition money that's collected, where does it go?
just into the general fund.
Just into general fund?
Mhm.
And then that's what they use, that extra money, that kind of thing is what they use to make adjustments to the budget from time to time, or?
Yeah.
Or we could ask for it first.
That's what I was wondering, if we could just say, hey, John Joe Medina has been on this for years. Can we have that money?
Or at least
Right.
a portion.
Portion of it, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Kim? Thank you, this was helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're back to unfinished business. And I think at this point, what I hear for unfinished and new business is that we seek a motion to table all 3 of these items until the next meeting, and Mr. Whitmore will contact the applicants in the meantime. So is there a motion? to table?
I make a motion.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any announcements?
So the beautification committee has been engaged with economic development to do basically a pretty substantial sidewalk project in the downtown area for 2nd Street all the way down to Chestnut on West Main Street. Part of that process, we're going to be putting out an RFP next month to have either an architecture or landscape architect come in, do a master plan with the beautification committee, thereby using that information then to, we'd have a sidewalk program plan because we're looking at redoing all the sidewalk, have the elements associated with green space beautification, so looking at those tree boxes, garden planters, things like that, those architectural elements that we could put into the sidewalk. That's going to be happening in August. Once we have a date set, I'd highly recommend all the URA members try to attend as well. We could possibly do it as a joint meeting that way, just to be able to, because this is a pretty substantial thing to coordinate on, and it fits into the general master planning that the board had wanted to do previously in downtown in Glen Elk. So that will be happening in the coming months, and we're looking to have that master planning session in August. That's all I have.
When that was the Glen Elk, is that the whole Glen Elk, or is that back in Parsons?
Okay, so for this master planning session, it would be the downtown. The project scope area that we've identified for the entire project is, if you think from like that corner, 2nd West Main over to Pike Street, then that whole rectangle all the way down to Chestnut. So it captures Pike Street, Main Street, the core of the downtown. Now for Glen Elk, we're not going to be doing a master planning session for that neighborhood. That's something they are currently in there is an effort from citizen group and business groups in Glen Elk to actually form their own 501c3 related to redevelopment of the area. That might be, once that organization is functional, would probably be the best conduit to work for a redevelopment plan for that neighborhood. With the downtown, I'll also be asking the uptown organization to attend to be able to provide what the business owners and our commerce, what's necessary, what they need out of their built environment.
John, Joe, you brought up a couple times, like changing the time of the meeting. Do you want that put on an agenda in June?
We have 8:45, so we don't have this problem of having to get out of the meeting early. We got something else coming up behind us. These guys got to stay late at night. It's being 8:45 in the morning.
So do you want that put on the agenda, the June agenda?
Sure.
Let's discuss. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn this evening?
So motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Anybody want to stay longer? All in favor? Aye.
You got dinner coming, just on a couple pieces or something, we're staying.
Careful.
Our next meeting,
Manja.
June 8th, Thursday, June 8th, 4:45 is the next meeting. Till the end of the fiscal. Is anybody out of town, gone? I know a lot of meetings and groups don't meet June, July. Does anybody have a conflict? It'd be the 8th and July is the 13th.
Not right
Not right now.
Awesome job. Guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Kathy.
Can you give us that list?